have the answer. The answer's in a bottle. The bottle's on the mountain, and the mountain's
The creation of music is the greatest of mysteries. Beethoven called it the language of the soul. Billy Joel calls it the gasoline of sex.
I have the answer, and it's what you want to hear, and I'll tell you what to
If writing music is hard, then making a living from it is probably harder. 2 cheers if you're played, 3 cheers if you're paid. Fortunately, there is an organisation dedicated to the business of music. Wherever music is performed, their members get paid. They've been in the business since 1914. They're called PRS.
Say, first and foremost, I'm a composer, but that is it's very hard, and it's very sort of abstract way of living, because you have to be alone to do that, and you have to enter your own world, and sometimes you're writing something and it doesn't become clear what the logic of that is until you're maybe right at the end of that piece, and it could be months down the line.
Songwriting I find the most difficult, demanding part of my life, because I really have to sit down with a piece of blank paper and come up with something that engages me, that amuses me, and will engage other people.
In this Victorian church, they're recording the music for the 18th James Bond movie, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Sticks and sort of trashy to sort of less traditional stuff, which is like this.
When the Bond film hits the cinemas and David Arnold's music is played nationwide, he'll get royalties. David is a member of the Performing Rights Society, PRS. It's PRS who'll keep track of performances of his music, and it's PRS who will collect the money on his behalf.
Sort of traditionally, they will be like played by trombones, and when the trombones play them, there's a real kind of fat rasp. So you get boom, blah, 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 like that. One of them is that. That's the main one, you know. I mean, yeah, you know, all that kind of stuff, and it always works wherever you put it. It always works. So if ever you're stuck for an idea in a Bond movie, use that as my handy hint. There's a brass coming up here. Just get it over there in a minute. Here it comes. That one. No, it goes. Oh, that bit. Right. I think the last thing you want to do, if you're in the middle of, you know, writing a piece of music, is to wonder why that number one thing that you had a couple of years ago is never, you know, and you read in the papers that it's sold, you know, 200,000 copies or something, you think, hold on for a second. If that thought flits across the transom of your imagination while you're in the middle of James Bond fighting half a dozen people, then it can, you know, it can kind of ruin the moment. So I think it's just as well that you got, you know, companies like PRS who are actually going to go out and find those things for you and make sure that they happen, and, you know, so you don't have to really worry about, you know, where the electricity bill is going to get paid or not.
Music is now part of our lives in more ways than were ever imagined. The business of PRS is to make sure the composers are fairly rewarded. PRS collects royalties for all music that is used anywhere in public or broadcast on radio and television. These royalties are then distributed through PRS to the composers and publishers, so they can concentrate on creating more music.
Well, I always feel sorry for people like Mozart, you know, who wasn't a member of PRS, you know, and he wrote all those fantastic tunes that everybody's playing to this day, and he never got a penny, you know, he died penniless.
It's the users of music who pay PRS. That's where the money comes from. Keeping track of public performances and broadcasts of the members' music and collecting the fees due is the job PRS have set themselves.
In the case of the PRS, what has to be determined by market research mechanisms is what performance, what work is being performed. One of possibly hundreds of thousands of performances that the PRS is tracking. Each performance may be in a venue, it may be a pub or a club or a discotheque or a factory, it may be broadcast, it may be live. Now think of the hundreds of thousands of works on the PRS's register. That produces the possibility of billions of plays of a work in different venues throughout the country. Keeping track of this presents the PRS with a task of daunting statistical complexity.
OK, so it's an episode of Teletubbies, and do you know the episode title, please?
The complex task starts here. PRS is a society of music creators, composers, lyricists, and music publishers. PRS does collectively what most members couldn't possibly do on their own. And it's very much a society of members, for writing can be a lonely business.
What's the work title?
PRS staff look after every aspect of their 30,000 members' affairs, from the registration of new works to sending out the checks. They help with queries, give advice, and restrain their personal opinions on who's in the charts.
Well, he'd need to join PRS Direct, that way he'd receive his royalties direct from us. Fine, well if you give me his name, Pinky. That's okay. Pinky, fine. Is that a first name or a second name?
We'll have to write to the BBC on your behalf and ask them if there's any missing...
It's a cat. Pinky's a cat. Right. Yes, I'm sure he is. And he plays a Yamaha organ, really.
Everywhere that uses music needs a PRS license. The payments they make are calculated on the kind of business involved. The PRS license is required by law, but customer care and sales advice make far better business.
Now, can you tell me, have you had any dealings with Performing Rights Society in the past?
No, I haven't.
Just to give you a little bit of background about us, I think most people have a perception that a royalty should be paid somewhere down the line, but they're not absolutely convinced as to how and why. And
when you've bought, a tape that's been properly recorded as opposed to a recording that you do yourself, why do you then have to pay again to play that in public?
It's only when it comes into a business and you're using it to promote and benefit your business that the royalty comes into play.
PRS computer systems track recorded and live music performances across Britain, but with about 8 billion music plays per year, not every squeak gets logged. Telephone licensing can show how music is being played, but not exactly what. So, statistically valid sampling is used to create as accurate a picture as possible.
First of all, did you have a TV in the premises at all last year? OK, fine. Record or tape player facility?
Radio or a music centre? Brilliant, OK. Do you have a jukebox there? You do. With the jukebox, is that...
terrestrial television. Satellite TV. Right, OK, so you've got all the football playing as well in there.
I'm Gary McReynolds, I work here. I'm a garage mechanic, but we're closed today because it's Sunday.
I'm Laura Donnelly and I work at the deli counter.
And you be Sam?
I'm Heather McNaught. I work for a fire investigator's office, and I hate it.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hutchison and I work in Crystal's nightclub in the bar.
Laura and Lisa are the songwriters for God's Boyfriend. They both joined PRS at 17, amongst the youngest members in the society. Laura used her first PRS check to buy her first professional guitar. God's Boyfriend are tipped as one of the fastest rising bands in Scotland. They have an important gig tomorrow night, and it has to go right. Critics described their last visit to London as somewhat flawed.
We flew down, guitars were all out of tune and all that kind of stuff. We tried to do it the right way, but we should have had guitar tech. That would have helped a lot. The other thing is, I think we probably just had a little too much to drink before we played.
Didn't he?
God's Boyfriend are one of almost 100 new bands from all over Britain, many of them PRS members who have come to Glasgow for In the City, the rock music equivalent of the Cannes Film Festival. Hopes are riding high, a publishing deal for their songs, a record deal for the band. In the bars and hotels of Glasgow, they gather. Here, the players in the music business wheel and deal. The A&R men, the agents, managers, lawyers, the promoters. Deals are done, bands are signed, friendships formed, scores settled. The music industry in Britain is now worth more than steel and cars put together. It can be a very tough world, and copyright protection is a better investment than half a dozen mobile phones. Glasgow is jumping. Every venue is booked solid, and around 60 unsigned bands are jostling for attention. Tonight's the night for God's Boyfriend, the gig to launch their new single.
The next song's going to be our next single that we're bringing out, called. It goes something like this.
With membership of PRS, Laura and Lisa are on their way. If the new single takes off, the band have a series of gigs planned for London. An album is in sight. They are on the edge of something. PRS affairs are controlled by a board of directors, elected by the members. The board have taken a bold step. They have formed an alliance with MCPS, the Collecting Society for Recording Rights. The alliance means PRS's running costs can be reduced and negotiating power is stronger. Together, members' rights are now worth around £500 million worldwide, but each society retains control of its own royalties. Another innovation is the creation of a pressure group called British Music Rights. Their brief is to drive forward the interests of composers, publishers, and the British music business.
This is a multi-layered set of discussions.
PRS is not all rock, pop, and James Bond. Mark Anthony Turnage is one of the brightest stars in what Paul McCartney has called serious music.
Bring to me a pint of wine and fill it in the silver.
Mark Anthony's new opera, The Silver Tassie, is the Millennium production for English National Opera.
The Silver Tassie is an opera that, based on the play by Sean O'Casey. He wrote it in 1928, and it's really an anti-war play, obviously written 10 years after the end of the war, First World War, and it's really about a hero called Harry Hegan, who is a fantastic footballer, scores lots of goals and wins cups and various things, and he actually goes off to war in the trenches and is injured, and really it's just his experience. He loses everything.
Oh, for God's sake, help me!
Actually, funny enough, it's like Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise, and really it's like a sort of an earlier version of that. Should we go? I wonder if we should do a bit of a football thing. I mean, I wonder if that's because I wanted to hear that.
When they come in,
because I'm quite fond of that, and well, I think I'm quite fond of it.
Referee.
Yeah, you know the bit I'm talking about where they sing da 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 da.
1 1 1 1 1 by the.
You know,
1 1 1 1.
That's right.
Couldn't take a beating like mine. They have cursing and grooming the whole time.
Yes.
May the game, play the game. I dodge past a man, rushing at me like a mad bull. I steady myself then to wham.
The government is promising a radical overhaul of the youth justice system, and the father
Broadcasting is probably the natural home for music. It is the lifeblood of many radio stations. Television puts out huge quantities of music every day, and the range of broadcast music is now infinite.
Wet in many places still across the country. Watch out for...
People love to put radio stations in boxes and say, well, that's classic FM, they just play music by dead guys. In fact, when you listen to the output, you'll hear that we're much, much more than that. And even from the Goretzky and the Michael Nyman and moving into film scores, TV scores, that really is a very, very important part of our repertoire.
Sarah Chang and Charles Abramovich, and the introduction and Tarantella.
In addition to the national radio and television networks, satellite and cable, there are over 200 local radio stations across Britain. Together, they contribute millions to PRS revenue for distribution to members, new and old.
And we're even now playing symphonic versions of Led Zeppelin tracks, which still is in copyright. So I think that the PRS arrangement is very important to us, and probably that part of our repertoire will be in growth over the coming years rather than in decline.
Whether rock, pop, jazz, folk, Asian, reggae or classical, broadcasting is probably the most influential music medium in Britain today. As part of their agreement with PRS, the national networks send in details of every piece of music they broadcast. Smaller stations are sampled on a national basis. The information is checked against recordings of the programmes. The system is designed to ensure accurate distribution of broadcasting royalties amongst all the members. Evelyn Glennie has been described as the greatest percussionist in the world. It's less well known that she is profoundly deaf.
The great thing about percussion is that there are basically no class barriers, so you can participate with little 5-year-olds or with grandmas, granddads, or the most brilliant tabla player in the world. There's always room for improvement within any type of company or organisation, and certainly the amount and the type of work that the PRS are involved with is just huge. And so, of course, for them to be able to keep tags on absolutely everything that musicians do, and of course every musician thinks that, well, they're the most important person at that particular time, and so I think that we have to help each other. I think that the performers can give the PRS more information as to what they are actually doing, but also for the PRS to really tighten up its whole system. I think the system is okay, but it does need tightening up.
Evelyn Glennie is now composing as energetically as she performs. She is also performing abroad more than ever, and it is to PRS that she looks when her foreign royalties are due.
M'enseigner un peu. Alors, en ce qui concerne l'œuvre Candle in the Wind, oui, c'est ça, l'œuvre dédiée à la mémoire de la princesse de Galles.
Almost every country in the world now has its own collecting society, the equivalent of PRS. Under international agreements, these societies collect the royalties for the performance and broadcasting of PRS members' music around the world. PRS does the same for them.
Ein Mitglied der PRS hat speziell die Musik geschrieben für eine Fernsehwerbung, die von einer Schweizer Firma in Auftrag gegeben wurde.
With International about how we can garner more information in the US and how we can protect our interests in the US better.
Oh, va bene. Prenderò un po' di dettagli riguardo a questo.
The system means that all copyright music in the world, over 15 million works, is available to every music user with a PRS license.
Perhaps because they just can't keep information to themselves and keep giving it away.
Wow, only me! No, please! No, please!
What used to be called ethnic music, from reggae to bhangra, is fast becoming mainstream. Bali Sagoo was the first composer in Britain to have an Asian language song in the charts.
I formed the first Asian group in this country. We were more into traditional things. And since Bali came on the scene, he changed the music scene altogether.
I think really I stumbled onto something very, very big many years ago because I was one of the first to basically fuse the Asian and the Western sounds together.
He was always messing about with new experiments. He was always doing some experiments with new beats and all that.
I'm a British Asian. I was born in India, but I've been living in Birmingham, in Britain all my life. So my parents wanted me to listen to the Bing Crosbys of the Asian market, I suppose. You know, they wanted me to listen to the traditional songs that they were listening to. I wanted to be a DJ. So now what I would do is I'll put my rhythm together like this onto the screen on my computer. And then I would think like I need a voice to suit this kind of song. So I would go to India, because I go to India almost every week, so I'm very lucky I can go out there and get what I want. And I want a hard, aggressive vocalist to sing this traditional song. So I would take the guy's vocal, which sound like this when I put it together. There's one time where Asian kids didn't blast Indian music in nightclubs or even in their cars. Now they're really more proud of it because it's got the heavy bass lines, it's got the raps, and it's got the Western influences, and also it affects them because it's part of them. After 9 albums, you know, you've got to be a member of a lot of big societies, and you need the backing of PRS to look after you really, and be able to go out there and collect whatever's due to you, and make sure you're not being cheated and things like that. And I think also the PRS had a major surprise as well by seeing how many records I'm actually selling, and how popular I am really, because I suppose they just thought Bally Sagoo was a balti dish or something, and we've never heard of him. And then all of a sudden they realise he's on the National Lottery, and he's number 12 in the charts, and he's selling more records than Spice Girls. You what, you know?
Erilyn Wallen is deeply into jazz, but she likes composing full stop. She doesn't see any barriers in music, just music.
I'm always drawn to composers who are able to express a wide breadth of emotion. And it just so happens that I think living sort of later end of the 20th century, there's so many different styles. And to me as a composer, that means there's so many different techniques that you can sort of get hold of and try and find new ways of expression. But there's something about performing which is so immediate, and I love the way things vanish into, you know, you'll do a concert and then it's gone into the air. That's just magic, because that's really what music is.
I think what we presented the PRS with was a very good idea that took composition from the creative spark to the final giving out to people.
PRS sponsors a number of awards, scholarships and music projects. Composers in Education allows Tim Fleming to introduce the children in his local primary school to the magical mysteries of songwriting.
I went walking because her voice has gone
The
down.
scheme is enormously popular and has been running since 1989 in dozens of schools all over Britain.
I'm trying to show them where songs come from, and so where creating things comes from, and it starts with an idea in your head. And really what this project is about is showing them the idea they have, showing them how to turn that into something slightly bigger, which you can then give to other people, you can communicate with to other people. So you take an emotion that you're feeling at that time, you turn it into a song, you turn it into a piece of music, and then you give that out to everybody else, and it becomes a very positive statement. So, if you like, it's starting at this very early age here at this infant school to get them in touch with their own creativity, to get them in touch with the the power that that has. You have a tiny idea which is this big, I tell you, we tell 10 people, we give it to a choir of 50, they sing it to 500 people, it goes on tape and it's sold to 3,000 people. It has great ramifications that really what I'm interested in is composing in a community context for people within their own communities, and that goes right down to children, and that's where it starts. You know, they are the composers of tomorrow.
The future presents enormous challenges for PRS. The use of music online increases every day, and new technology is being developed to license it effectively. Multiplex systems are expanding, and 1,000 new satellites are planned. PRS is taking a lead in global agreements on the protection of intellectual property, online searching, and the development of unique digital identity codes for all musical works. Music is a business, but the creation of music remains at the heart of PRS, and without the work it does, music would suffer a terrible loss. And who could bear that? For music will always be amongst the very best of our favourite things.
The best song of all time.
It's a fight-off between God Only Knows by Brian Wilson or Ave Maria, and I'm going to give it to Ave Maria.
Big Sky by the Kinks.
Why by Annie Lennox.
Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones.
Jeff Buckley, Lover, You Should Have Come Over.
Suspicion by Elvis Presley.
I didn't write it, whatever it is.
All of Us Army by Elvis Costello and The Attractions.
What's Going On by Marvin Gaye.
Rock With You by Michael Jackson.
The Jam, Thick as Thieves.